welcome to another amazing episode of Say It Online, where we help digital agency owners stop just randomly shouting into the void and start communicating meaningfully and effectively in this digital age. I'm your host, Say Gabriel, and this episode was brought to you by our sponsor, Nancy Content. If you're sick of conversion content being a huge pain in your agency's butt, especially websites, campaigns, etc., let's talk. With the smoothest content process ever, a team of unbelievably skilled and organized content strategists, and years of subcontracting experience, Anansi is looking to make your life as a digital agency owner unbelievably easier. Just head, if you're interested, to anansicontent.com, that's ANANSI content.com, and hit Let's Talk. And now, without further ado, here's our episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Say It Online, where we help digital agency owners communicate in this awesome and scary digital age. I am here today, really excited to be interviewing Victor Vento of Ventobot. Victor, why don't you just start by taking a few minutes to tell us about you, an overview of your business, that kind of a thing.
Sure. Just like you said, Victor, with Ventobot, we're focused on marketing automation. So more specifically in the way we communicate, from Facebook ads to chatbots to funnels. That's kind of our bread and butter there. And it's really all about connecting with people. Everyone's heard, tell a story. And that it's really about having conversations, right? So the way we do that with people is by helping our clients become the voice inside their customer's head. So we kind of just extract a few things and kind of take it from there.
Okay, I love the way you describe that. So I think that, marketing automation, first of all, is really hot and just a really hot topic right now. Lots of people are looking for ways to, get those leads in and, get their word out there without being chained doing the work all the time. But I heard that actually looks like a lot of different things. You mentioned chatbots, you mentioned Facebook automation. How did you find yourself in this space? Is this something that you were always interested in? Did you see a need in the marketplace? Kind of how did this evolve for you? So specifically in marketing, it comes from a background of, I was a huge gamer in high school and total nerd. And very quickly found out that the programming was something I was good at, but not necessarily what I wanted to do. And the storytelling is where I really found my superpower. So that kind of fast forward a couple of things, and that really led to how we connect with people and how we lead people through any type of story is very important, right? Everyone talks about the customer journey, and that's essentially what we're doing. So that's kind of how that started and kind of wound through. And what better way to lead someone through a story than having a conversation with them, right? So okay, so that's interesting. So I'm hearing that, I don't necessarily connect automation with telling a story, but what I'm hearing from you is that automation is just the platform that you're using to, as you said, become that voice in your customers' heads, be that person who is speaking to them, engaging with them, telling a story throughout the process. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? That's a means of delivering that?
Right, exactly. So, it's conversations lead everywhere. You never know where a conversation is going to lead you. So if it's intentional, if there's an intent behind it, a lot of that background is where the automation happens, right? If there's intent behind it, then you can lead someone to a certain path that it allows them to say, I've chosen this. However, this is the best. We've shown you the best result that should fit what you're looking for.
Okay. So I'm hearing that the kind of strategy and storytelling behind it is that you're giving the choice to the customer or the prospect or the lead or et cetera in terms of where they want to go. But you've already plotted out, in our business, we present our packages like a choose your own adventure story. I'm kind of hearing that there's a little bit of that in that you're planning out what are the different journeys that people in different situations or different needs are going to take, and how can we enable them to choose those paths themselves? Is that?
Exactly. Going from the route of I have a choice now. I can go left or right down this fork is completely up to me. And we can't choose that for them. We can't force someone down that path, but presenting both routes that lead to the same location, we're giving them that choice where they're still in control. And that creates a much stronger relationship, much like when you have any type of conversation with anyone. Usually when you want to speak to somebody, it's you have some intent behind them. You want to get to know them for a specific reason. You don't know where it's going to go or how you're going to get there. You just know where the end result is. And then mapping the in-between is really what we're doing here.
Oh, and that is so, so powerful. And I think that, I'm hearing that this fits in really well with kind of the direction that I've been observing in terms of not just digital marketing, but in terms of buyers and buying and making choices as a whole. Like we're dealing with so much more of an educated customer base, right? With online reviews and all this different type of stuff. I think that sense of choice and being engaged in a decision is something that is growing as a desire for people. So that's just something that I've observed. So it's really cool to hear that you're operating within that space.
Right.
I would like to talk about, though, I know you mentioned chatbots.
Yeah.
Now, I've been hearing a lot about chatbots from people, and I myself have had experiences with chatbots. I've had good experiences and I've had not so good experiences. So I'm curious, in what is essentially a sandbox platform, right? In that someone can type anything into a chat box, any kind of question or demand. How do you anticipate and execute what those paths are going to be?
Yeah, sure. So let me tell you what it's not. Let me start there. A lot of people say this is the new email, right? Because it's the new way of communicating. We're already communicating with our friends, our family, and businesses. We go on Facebook and we're like, there's that big send message button where we want to say like, hey, some are pre-populated with what are your services? Anyone available to talk? And that instant gratification is how we communicate now. Whereas we used to sit down and go through emails and kind of read through a bunch of that, where we want quick responses to our questions right now. And that's just the world we've moved to. So it's not email and it's not the new email. It's just the new way we're communicating. We just communicate a lot quicker, and it allows it to be more conversational. In an email, we tend to be more long form, tell a story, and there's a lot more content involved there. Whereas in the messenger conversation, any type of chatbot, we're looking for a quick response to a specific answer. Usually, for example, setting up a calendar appointment, you can say, hey, it looks like you're wanting to set this up. Can I have your phone number, your name? Here are the times available. And it's as simple as that, right? Or on the other end, it can get very complicated to where you can start to add AI to it to start to learn how people are talking. And then that's when it gets really like into the weeds of things. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but it kind of allows it to be even more of an experiential type of way of delivering content to people.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, this is not something that's just going to come in and overhaul systems that we're already using, like email, and that more it plays a very specific function. And that function is, at the simple end, to answer questions quickly and clearly, and at the more complex end, maybe I'm hearing that it's still kind of answer questions, just maybe a little bit more complex questions that it's answering. Okay. So how do people then know whether, because always there's this shiny object syndrome, right? So it's like, oh my God, chatbots are coming out. Everybody wants a chatbot. So what sorts of businesses, agencies in particular, right? That's who our listeners are, would this maybe be a better fit for?
Well, it could, agencies that connect with people, for example, someone is more, I forget the actual statistical numbers, but statistics show that it is higher for someone to engage with the website if there is some type of chat widget involved on the site. A simple kind of FAQ style could be beneficial to almost anyone, right? Because again, someone's on their phone, whereas they feel more comfortable connecting and chatting and opening a messenger conversation or some type of messaging conversation rather than clicking around the site. Again, it just feels more natural because we feel like we're talking to somebody, even though they might understand that it is a bot. It at least gives them the information they want right away without having to search for it, right? Where we can look for an FAQ section on the website, or we can say, hey, what are your hours? And then, oh, it looks like you wanted to look about hours. Here you go. And, it's just something like that. So I would say something as simple as a quick, generic FAQ on a website would work really well for almost anyone. When you get a little bit more involved with it, for example, if there's specific things you want to lead people to, on certain pages, that's when I would say someone could look into, hey, we have a webinar on this. It looked like you wanted to, we have this thing for you. Whatever your lead magnet is, you can have it engaged to ask them, hey, do you want this? Does this help you right now? And that way that could start to push them toward that down your funnel or down your path.
Okay. So I'm hearing that, it can be a fit for quite a few people in its simplest form. It's more the execution that might vary from, agency to agency or person to person. Now, I'm curious though, because as one might guess, I'm already pondering, how would a Nancy do with a chatbot, et cetera. Is there anybody that this is really not a good fit for?
That is a great question. I have not run into anyone yet. So let me just important there, pause, yet. I'm sure there is. However, as of now, I have yet to run into anyone who hasn't been able to utilize it in some form. For example, even with the simplest FAQs, that helps a lot of businesses because imagine that, just them asking that question, technically they become a lead, right? You have just now captured, and that's, at least for the digital agency world, that's kind of what we're in the game of. We help people, and we can only help people that initiate a conversation with us. And that's the best form of them initiating a conversation with us.
Okay. So I'd like to unpack this. This is super intriguing, super valuable. Thank you for sharing. But I'd like to unpack this a little bit more. So in my experience, and I'm not an expert in this not at all. I'm literally speaking from a consumer perspective in this. I have, typed a question into a chat box, let's say on a website. In my experience, I've had a different experience with, let's say, a Facebook Messenger bot versus a website chat box. And, on a Facebook Messenger one, I've noticed, pops up different things. You can maybe click. It's maybe more of a, what hours are you open? But I know that when I've gone onto a website and put in information, it seems like quite a bit more often there's an actual person on the other end who's going to hop on and respond to me at some point. So do you differentiate between those two? Are there certain types or categories of this? Is it really just infinite possibilities and you craft it according to the need? How do you decide, what if somebody is not going to be responding to a message for 12 hours and they could have found something on the site already? Is it still worthwhile in terms of that engagement? Are you then maybe losing people who aren't getting that instant gratification? I know there was a lot there, so just pick a piece and
no.
Sorry.
No, definitely. Okay, so to touch on the last one, I guess, the instant gratification piece is definitely something that comes into play. Because, for example, let's say I was in the website game. It's someone is looking for a website, they're actively looking, they're searching Google or anything like that, or they're, asking around and they get tagged, they go to that person's website, and if they see a chat widget, they will say, hey, I have a question here about this, and this, or let's say most common, not the type of people that we generally want to work with, but what's your price, right? They're solely focused on that. You can give kind of a range automatically. You can have presets that say, hey, this is kind of set up this way and this way and this way, but it really depends on what it is you're looking for. It's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string, and you can have things like that and add personality to some type of chatbot. Whereas the live agent style is connected to a specific person that's more geared toward sales, usually, in my experience. they'll answer your specific questions and they'll say, okay, and they'll usually push you to schedule a call. Whereas less invasively, we're answering their question and educating them, and they've become a lead. So that way, if you have any type of like retargeting plays on your site, which I recommend anyone always have, is, hey, we noticed XYZ, you asked about this. And that could be shown to them as a remarketing play. And we know how, again, we're being that voice inside their head. You asked about price. Like, what is it that your goal is really? And then they see something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. That was actually going to be one of my next questions, is what is kind of the recourse, not maybe recourse is the wrong word, but what is the follow-up? How do you continue that engagement once they've left, if they haven't, for example, given you an email address? But what I'm hearing is that, for that follow-up question, there is the magic of retargeting, which I think most of our audience are probably already familiar with. And I'm also hearing that there is kind of a range of automation that you can put towards it, and that it can be a little bit more oriented towards, a real person is going to pick it up and talk to you and maybe like have that be part of a larger strategy. Or, it could be a bit of a slower burn, more of a nurturing process where you're just focused on answering their questions and building value that way. Is that
right? Exactly. So we work specifically in the Facebook world, and we work with Facebook Messenger bots. So that could be added to websites. And if you're pixeling people, again, kind of a similar thing there, but that allows you, someone asked about this. If we look for a specific word, if they said something about price, we can subscribe them to a follow-up sequence. It's like, hey, 12 hours, 24 hours later, that says, hey, you asked about price. Is that something you're still interested in? Right? And again, it's not as invasive as a live agent would be. That'd be like, all right, cool, we can do this, this, and this. Here are the criteria. Let's schedule a call. Those people might be ready to buy, sure, but that's such a small pool of people. Also, we want to. There's the people that are like 90 days and on that will eventually end up working with us on some level, and kind of just following up with that takes away. Or let me put it this way: it gives you back more time to actually focus on helping them rather than playing the follow-up game, right?
Okay, this is super intriguing. So one of the things that I heard there is that you actually have I'm hearing that Facebook as a platform, right? Like as opposed to say some sort of chatbot or live chat widget or connected to a real person, et cetera, on a website. I'm hearing that Facebook has some advantages because you can continue to re-engage them on that platform. Everybody uses Facebook. Well, maybe not everybody, but most people use Facebook. If you talk to them on Facebook once, they're probably already using that regularly. So you can actually re-engage them without needing their email address or something. So that's kind of one thing I'm hearing that's really powerful and cool about Facebook as a medium. Now, the other thing I heard there, if I haven't lost it while I was pondering the first thing, is that this is actually captures more people at different stages of the funnel. One of the things that we as content strategists tend to identify is, your ideal audience. You're always going to have people kind of near the top of the funnel who are still trying to figure out what their problem is, further down. Okay, maybe they understand their problem. You need to educate them more about a solution. And only a very small fraction of those people are actually ready to pick a solution and ready to buy. So what I'm hearing is that you can nurture people who are higher up in the funnel using this and re-engage them and potentially move them further down the funnel, as opposed to just capturing those fast movers the way other strategies, often, like email marketing strategies that are more direct sales oriented, or thank you pages after, you click on an ad or something. I'm hearing that this is appropriate for people who are a little bit higher, not quite ready to buy.
Correct. Right, exactly. So
correct me if I'm off.
Yeah, I mean, and then these statistics I know rather well. It's about 15% of people are ready to buy within the next 30 days. Right? That's such a small pool when you really think about it, about the amount of people visiting anyone's site. The other 85% are not ready until at least 90 days. And then this is where the whole digital marketing world really focuses, that whole gauntlet of the first 7 to 30 days. They're like, buy my stuff. Otherwise, we're not talking to you. Whereas that's why it feels so saturated, because we're all fighting for that same 15%. Whereas have a conversation with the other 85%. Tell them, hey, we just started a conversation. We know where we want to get to. We'll get there eventually. And, until when you're ready, this is how we can help you. We can give you this, we can give you this. Or if you have any questions, just message us here. And again, I didn't collect an email yet. Not that I won't. Maybe they ask for, okay, cool. Then what about this, this, and this? And they've maybe triggered something else that I say, okay, well, this is something you're interested in. I can send it to you here. Can I have your email address to send it to you? Now, that was very conversational and less invasive than give me your first name, email, and I'll send it to your email address, which you probably also know that I'm going to be marketing to you for the next 7 to 30 days, right?
And can you do, and forgive me if this is a silly question, but can you really do all of this with automation? Can automation really kind of mimic that conversational experience strongly enough that people are satisfied?
I've seen a lot of success with it, yes. There's a lot of things you have to think through. It becomes one of those, like crazy webs in the background to make a conversation seem very natural.
Yeah, that's just what I'm like. I think in kind of hierarchies and webs, hence, Anansi the spider god. And I'm thinking, holy cow, already creating a user journey for how someone is going to move through, a website or a marketing campaign or both combined or et cetera can be an in-depth process. So what are some of the things that you're kind of considering or mapping out or doing in the back end to make this successful?
So we usually start with the main end goal is, right? For us, it's one of our kind of complete done for you packages. So we know that that's the end goal. So then we take a step back and we're like, what are all the ways to get there, right? They can go just this single package and then a maintenance, or just this and this and then the big one, or the small one first just to test it out. And then maybe down the line, they'll keep coming back and do the big one. So we kind of look at all of those avenues and we create conversations around that. Again, it's very intent driven, just like I mentioned earlier, where we have an intent when we talk to somebody new. There's a specific reason we go to talk to them. We know what we generally want to talk about. We don't know how we're going to get there yet. That is where that whole web that you're thinking of really comes into play. We kind of start creating one path, and then we're like, all right, so that kind of opened up 1 or 2 paths there. So let's finish those and lead them back to this one, right? They all lead to the same place. Again, we're creating that fork in the road, allowing that person to choose how they want to get there, whether it takes them 3 to 7 interactions to get there, or it takes them 20 to 30 interactions, right? We've created routes for each one of those and a path for them to go so that feels more natural to them and how they like to communicate.
Wow. So this is quite, my organizational brain is super excited and intrigued at this thought in this process. So how has that, I'm thinking, some of our audience members, maybe they've dabbled in chatbots or maybe they've been interested in them, et cetera. How has that process of digging behind the scenes and mapping that out, how has that improved for you over time? Like what sorts of maybe early pitfalls did you experience and how were you able to overcome them?
Early pitfalls, not pricing it high enough. Because I didn't realize, like I mentioned, you're like, okay, it goes from here to here. And a lot of people think that's it. And then when you start getting into it, you start to really see how it opens up different avenues and different paths for people to take. And you're kind of like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
And this is where, much like web development, for example, I feel like a lot of people can say, oh yeah, it's easy. There's this Wix and WordPress and all these site builders that I can do. And then you start getting into it and you're like, oh my goodness, there is all these plugins. There is all this widgets and those widgets. And what am I doing? And then you get some kind of Frankenstein. And that's why we're the experts and help people with that, right? So there's a specific process that we go through that kind of over the course of like a month or two, we usually help people map this entire process out, and then we build it. So that is really how at least we found to be the best way to do it.
Okay. And do you just do all the mapping, kind of like, a discovery or a road mapping thing, and then build it out? Or is this kind of an iterative thing that once you launch it, you're able to identify, maybe paths that you missed or things to, I'm just curious what that looks like.
It's a great question. And I'm smiling over here because that's usually how we work with people on some type of retainer, is because conversations evolve over time. And the way you've communicated your services today is completely different from the way you've communicated your services 2 years ago. And it will be completely different in another 2 years. So understanding, and here's the kicker, each specific question back and forth or interaction back and forth, you can see where the stopping points are. Much like in any conversation in real life. For example, if you cold called 100 people, by the time you get to the 100th person, you're not going to start the same way. You're not going to lead into it the same way. You're not going to finish the same way as you did the first two. So throughout that process, you have evolved how you've said things, how you've explained things, and where you've also seen where the stopping points are, and you've seen how to overcome those. Either you skip that altogether or you find another way of saying it.
So what I'm hearing is that much like in most circumstances, data is king, and being able to actually observe what's working and what's not and kind of iterate or shift according to that, while not strictly necessary, is just going to supercharge things. I know that kind of makes sense with content. We used to come in and, like build a website or build a marketing campaign and send it out into the world. And we have really found that that's just the beginning. Yeah. I mean, you need to produce regular content. You need to, you can look at that data. You can see where our page is converting, where are they not converting, what can we update or change, and then look at it again. And that's not to say that just doing that initial kind of foundation work isn't valuable, just that there's a huge opportunity to kind of supercharge that. That's kind of what I mean, right?
Exactly.
Always just correct me if I'm off here.
No.
But this is new to me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, here's the thing. It's such a new thing too, that there's so much for people to do with it. And I would say just in the last 6 months I feel like a year ago, I felt like I was like, wow, this is like nothing compared to what it was a year ago. There's so much more thing. The more you get into it, the more you start to really see what its possibilities are, right? I guess you can say I should study philosophy at this point to understand how people think better and allow me to have better conversations with people that way, to predict the routes people would take, right? It's kind of getting to that weird kind of.
So you're becoming a professional empath, essentially, is what you're saying, is that
right.
Your job comes down to understanding how people are feeling and what they're looking for and what they need and how to engage with them in a way that matters to them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So like, exactly. There's like certain things now that are, I'm just kind of, I can foresee, like predict for this style of business, it is probably going to go this route. These are the most common ways people get to your sale. And so we suggest this, and this. And we'll adjust. However, this is what we're going to start with because this is what we found to be the best, right? It just allows you to like really understand how people speak and what they actually look for, which is often what we think is not necessarily true in different types of industries, especially for this one.
And this industry, you're talking about the digital
agency world, right?
Yeah. And is there a particular, I know that you've done some work for other digital agencies. I know we've chatted about that in the past, but do you work, because this sounds like the kind of thing that you would gain a lot of awareness within a particular industry really quickly. So do you work within very specific industries, or is this the kind of thing that the methodology is the most important thing and you can apply it for almost any industry, or what does that look like?
I would say the latter. I really need to choose an industry. I've fallen in love with like 2 or 3 of them. And at this point, I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm dating several people, So It's, yeah, I think you and I mentioned that before once in a call. The methodology really stays, once you understand how to do it, it can evolve to really, I guess, encompass that particular industry. You can kind of understand, and then you would really be more of an expert to focus in on an industry. I guess I just haven't taken that jump yet specifically. Whereas, because it just helps me personally actually create a lot better conversations when I have with people. Like in my real life, it kind of brings that back out, and it really forces you to listen to people again. Whereas we're always thinking ahead and kind of not listening to what the person is saying. And often we're like, shoot, I forgot that person's name, because you were thinking of what you were predicting what they were going to say. So then instead, like, we really listen to them, and that understanding that concept, it really helps you blend both how you interact in real life with someone digitally as well.
That makes a lot of sense. I definitely noticed that in my own business and life. I mean, for one, I have a lot of background in compassionate communication and conflict resolution, et cetera. And much to my surprise, I find even though we don't get into a lot of conflict at work, it comes into play every single day. In terms of talking to anyone you could possibly think of talking about. And I see the same thing, doing strategies has certainly turned me. I can't speak for the other strategists, but I suspect the same with them. It's turned me into a better listener, and a bit able to dig a little bit deeper and, hear a little bit better what's being said. That's really intriguing. So I am curious, what are the industries that you've been dating?
Great question. So the one that I feel is probably my top right now would be more kind of like a single authority figure entrepreneur. And that's because of the way they communicate. They really inspire people, and their whole world really is about having conversations, and that's how they work with people. And so that has really translated very well to what we're doing for them in the background. The second, I would say, would be more of like a subscription box style of business. So the ones I'm sure you've heard of, like Dollar Shave Club or BarkBox and places like that. There's one that we like, Escape the Crate. It's kind of like a escape room in a box. It's really fun. They're really fun people, and they're very creative and love storytelling. So
escape room in a box? Okay,
yeah, isn't that fantastic?
We could totally dig into that, but please keep going.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, they're one of the cool people that I love talking to. So, but again, I believe it's just because, and I guess the commonality between those two industries are they're creating experiences for people. They're kind of, I would say the box subscription one is kind of a blend of digital and physical, which is really nice. And I feel like it's all actually coming around full circle, and we are starting to move back more to let's send a letter somewhere. I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot more of that from people to kind of stick out. Whereas it's just funny to see that as we're moving back to something like that. So that's really the commonality I found between the two, is like the experience that they create amongst their clients and customers.
That makes a lot of sense, that they themselves are, what makes things powerful or different is the fact that they're creating an experience, not necessarily how they are creating that experience, but the fact that the energy and attention is going into understanding, empathetically how the other person is going to be processing and absorbing this, understanding their problems, understanding where they're coming from, positioning it in a way that makes their life easier, as opposed to, as you said, kind of competing with all that other noise that's already out there. I'm curious here, do you have any, so you mentioned that things have changed a lot in the past year and are most likely going to be changing again as things move forward. So what do you see for the future? Are there any kind of trends that you see kind of emerging in this field, or anything that people can look forward to, keep an eye on? What's your inside perspective on where this is going?
I expect within the next year or two, I guess here's my bold prediction. Within the next year or two, almost every business, I guess virtually every business, is going to have some form of chatbot. that helps them with the initial admin side of communicating.
Okay.
Because and we're just going to be so used to communicating with businesses like that. By that point, I feel like by this time next year, we're going to have, oh gosh, I don't even know the number, but it's going to be quite a large amount of people that just, I expect to have a chatbot with them. Otherwise, I'm kind of like, oh, they're going to be in that type of, oh, you don't have a website yet type of deal, right?
Okay. So the future of marketing is chatbots. Maybe not exclusively, but I hear that it's on the rise, and certainly I've been noticing increasingly more of them. Again, in my own lens as a consumer. So, we've chatted lots about chatbots, and I think that's great. I know this was something I have been dying to know more about for a really long time, and I've been hearing a lot of buzz about it in the digital agency space. But I'm curious, are chatbots all you do? How do they fit into maybe your larger marketing strategies that you help people with? Or is it really, like you are the producer of the automation? I'm hearing there's a lot of strategy in what you do. So I'm just curious as to whether chatbots are really your thing or whether it goes beyond that and fits into something bigger.
So we specifically focus on three things. Chatbots is definitely one of them. Facebook ads is another. And then funnel creation is the third. And we've decided to just stick to that and that platform alone for advertising, specifically because they marry very well with each other. For example, it's, just using ads to some type of messenger list opt-in. Imagine you going live to your audience and saying, hey, we're talking about this thing here. If you guys want a copy of it, just let me know below, what your biggest issue is, or what you want to see in yourself in the next year, and then we'll send it to you. So as soon as they comment, they automatically get sent with your chatbot that thing. And while you're live on, Facebook, for example, and that paired with an ad and then a funnel in the background, now you can retarget and get them to opt in again. Remember, that allowed you to get them as a subscriber on your messenger list, and then you can remind them to get another thing or watch this next webinar that adds to what they asked for, right? So it's very congruent with each other. And we have done that for quite a few people now.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely, I hadn't thought of that. That's super appealing to me. We've been starting to do increasingly more kind of live streams and giving live value-based content, which is another trend that I think is growing quite significantly. And, the ability to, some of those things are things that arguably could be handled by a person, but would take multiple different steps. Plus, you need that person and that resource. So I'm hearing that this is a really good way to streamline not just the delivery of targeted value-based content, but also that continued engagement process. But it's really sounding to me, again, let me know if I'm off here. It's really sounding to me like these tools are only as strong as the strategy behind them.
Correct.
You said you just do Facebook ads, funnel building, as well as chatbots, all on the Facebook platform. But I'm really hearing that the magic that comes out of this is all that work that's happening behind the scenes. So what sort of, I know you mentioned that you do a lot of planning before you execute these kinds of things, but do you have, a top level process or strategy, or how has that kind of strategy process emerged to make this really successful? Or maybe a better approach might be, what are, again, some of those strategic pitfalls that other people that you've seen or encountered going through this?
Great question. So for us, we usually, I guess the way we work with people and our process is some type of intake form to gather these initial questions. Because once we get to some type of call where we start to understand things, that allows me to do a little bit of research. I'm not just, hey, so what's your name? I don't know their name, but hey, so what's your business and what are you selling? We're not having that conversation. We're having a much more intimate conversation. I'm like, okay, so this is what it is. Let's look at what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, and let's see how we can make it better. And we start to go from there, and that kind of leads into an infinite realm of possibilities. So that is at least kind of like a, bird's eye jet plane view of what we do and how we start with people. It's
Okay.
the pitfalls I've seen are when someone will kind of only look at one part of it, right? They're like, okay, I know where we want to go. I know I want to make this thing be sold. I want to sell this package, this product, whatever it may be. And then they say, okay, well, I can do that by one direct route. Again, that usually focuses then on the 15% of the people that are ready to buy. And that leads to, either more time or more money spent on that 15%, and not much comes afterwards. There's no way to talk. There's nothing thought about for the other 85%. How are we eventually going to get them to buy our thing?
Okay. So I'm hearing, and this is something that you brought up before. So I'm hearing that number one is focusing too much on that ready to buy. And number two is not looking at the bigger picture, and this, I feel like we're almost coming full circle with this conversation, not thinking about the whole journey, just thinking about the end action you want them to take.
Right.
So missing out on that kind of understanding piece of how, not just one route from point A to point B, but what are the different things people might be considering, and how can you support them in getting there, as opposed to how do you get them there as quickly as possible. Okay. So we're starting, this is still all really great. We're starting to wind down here a little bit. So before we fully wrap up, I'm just curious, is there anything that maybe I should have asked or didn't, or something that you particularly want to share?
If you do advertise on Facebook, please do not sell from your ad. As counterintuitive as that sounds, the ad is simply meant to get a click. That is it. It's your icebreaker. It's your conversation starter. Because once they've clicked through, now they've shown intent. Now you can think about it from a Google Ads perspective and say, they're looking for this. And your landing page sells your opt-in, your sales page sells your stuff.
Yeah, this is very much like email marketing. One of the big things that I think people miss in email marketing is that it's very similar, right? Like it's, as you said, it sounds counterintuitive, but that first email you're sending, or, the starting place for that email, which often is an ad, or, even on your website or something, it's not about making the sale right then and there. It's about getting them to the next piece of the puzzle. It's about getting them to that, like each piece of content has a fixed purpose, and that is to get them to the next piece of content. Not every single piece of content is getting them to sell. That is
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
I'm relating it to my own experience here, but I want to make sure I'm not just steamrolling over.
Right. No. Completely agree with that. And I mean, if you want to add to it, much like you said with email follow-ups, imagine having ads that also say those exact same things in your emails as a retargeting play. So now you're everywhere.
So, yeah.
For all those ninja people that I'm sure are listening, so they're like, oh, that's a ninja trick. They write that down.
Awesome. Well, Victor, you have given just so much value here. This is really great. I feel like I've learned a lot. I've had to mute myself just so that I could take notes on the side, although that is becoming pretty consistent with a lot of the interviews that I do here. So yeah, this has been excellent. Is there any, so for our audience, if they want to find out more about you, maybe engage with you, either chat with you or interested in pursuing a service like this, where can they find out more about you? And where can they check out anything that you might have for them?
That's a great question. So we have our customer desire formula that is kind of usually our foundational starting step for anyone. 3 simple steps to turn customers into raving fans. You can go to our site. It should be one of the first things that's presented to you. Or if you want to just go to Ventobot/CDF, that should take you to where it is.
Okay, awesome. So ventobot.com is that website. And I'm hearing that ventobot.com on its own will get you there, or ventobot.com / did you say C?
CDF. So the first letters of customer desire.
CDF. Oh, I'm totally off. Good thing I asked. Right. Customer desire formula. Oh, gosh. Isn't that call myself a writer and I'm messing up afterwards all over the place. But awesome. Ventobot.com / CDF for that customer desire formula. That sounds great. Of course, we will link out to that in the show notes, and any other cool URLs that we've referenced here. I don't think there's been too many, but overall, just thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing so much value to our listeners. Thank you for coming on here and chatting with me for a little while. I feel like I could dig way further. I have more questions, but we're almost out of time here. So I'm going to have to wrap up. Awesome. So thank you, Victor. This has been an absolute pleasure. I wish you the best of luck in what you're doing. And we might be having a chat about this. If not right away, then in a few months. You've certainly... Okay. So thanks. And all of our listeners out there, I hope that this has given you a little bit more insight into the world of chatbots and how they are impacting our communication as a digital agency. Hopefully you guys go searching for Victor. I believe he also mentioned you can connect with him on Facebook if that's something that you'd like to do. And hope that you guys all have a really excellent rest of your day. And that does it for another amazing episode of the Say It Online podcast. Join us next week. And don't forget to like and subscribe, whether it's iTunes, whatever your favorite podcast player is. It is always, always appreciated. It really makes a difference for us. It helps us get this word out to more people. As always, this episode was brought to you by our sponsor and Say's own business, Anansi Content. If you're a digital agency owner and you're still wasting too much time chasing down content that maybe isn't even all that great, let's talk. We've spent years working on the best process for selling, planning, and delivering amazing conversion content for your client projects. Better yet, we moosh our process to yours so that your client and you have a seamless and amazing experience the entire time through. If you're interested, just go to our website. That's www.anansicontent.com. That's ANANSI content.com. And just click Let's Talk. I'd love to chat with you. Someone else on the team would also love to chat with you too. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day.